some people at my school, they knew what they wanted to do from a child, but I never really knew what I wanted to do. It does make you question everything you do, even life in general. You know, you just start to think, does this bring me joy? But my downfall was I was very scared of being in the public eye. And a lot of creatives are, I find. They don't always want to be on camera, or they're happy making things, but when it comes to you being in the forefront, it can be quite scary, and at that time I was quite scared of all that, really. Again, it's all being about proactive. To anyone out there, if you want to do it, you've got to be proactive. You can't really sit back and just hope someone will find you.
Hi, I'm Claire, founder of Creativity Found, a community for creative learners and educators, connecting adults who want to find a creative outlet with the artists and crafters who can help them do so, with workshops, courses, online events and kits. For this podcast, I chat with people who have found or refound their creativity as adults. We'll explore their childhood experiences of the arts, discuss how they came to the artistic practices they now love, and consider the barriers they may have experienced between the two. We'll also explore what it is that people value and gain from their newfound artistic pursuits, and how their creative lives enrich their practical, necessary, everyday lives. For this episode, I'm speaking with Natalie Smart, who has always loved creating with textiles, but has often lacked the confidence to push herself into the public eye and make the most of some of the opportunities that came her way. Natalie is learning to get over those fears now and finding joy in a new creative venture. Hi Natalie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Claire. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Oh, you're very welcome. So start by telling me how you currently like to keep yourself creatively busy.
Well, it'll be mainly with my business, which is called Bargello A Go Go. And it's an embroidery business where I've created these retro style designs that are very influenced by the 1960s and 70s in style. It's a form of embroidery that's kind of a straight stitch on canvas, and you can create all these great things for your home or accessories to make, such as bags. And I create kits where people can make these things themselves as well, which is quite fun and exciting.
Brilliant. We shall hear a bit more about that later. Did you have a creative or a crafty childhood?
Yes, so when I was young, I always remember from a very young age, probably about 6 or 7, doing knitting that I really enjoyed, that my great auntie taught me how to do. Used to make little knitted toys and things, which was quite good fun. So I was always creative with more textiles things, really, from a child, and just creative in general. When I grew up, you had television and that, but it was like 4 channels, and it wasn't like, didn't necessarily have everything you have now, or computers as much. My brother and sister would create board games and games in the garden, and naturally creative as children, we'd do creative things.
Yeah. Did you have opportunities to explore that further, maybe at school, try some other textile crafts?
So at school, we used to do different textile things. You know, used to do drawing and painting and some embroidery as well. And we used to do some knitting things. So I was part of Brownies as a child, so you used to get your different badges. So you would do things like a concert badge where I play an instrument, so it's a recorder. So I did creative things like that as well. And then obviously your knitting badge and crochet and all them different kind of things, embroidery badge. So you'd learn things like that as a child. And then when I sort of got to my teenage years, probably when I started senior school, we had a textiles class where you'd learn to use the sewing machine. And I really enjoyed that too. And also when I was about 12 years old, there was a little craft centre near where I lived. And there was different crafts in there where people sold their handmade goods, such as there was a candle maker. And then there was someone that did pottery. And there was another lady called Anne who did machine knitting. And she let me have a go on a knitting machine, and my parents were lovely and supportive, and she had a spare knitting machine that she sold to them so I could make things on the knitting machine when I was younger at home. So I made little
Oh,
hats for family for Christmas, and scarves and little jumpers with cat patterns on them, because it had like a chart thing on the knitting machine, which does fair roll. So it's like a punch card, it's called, and then it could pick up different patterns. And then in my mid-teens, I've stopped doing machine knitting so much, but always went back to sort of the hand side of things, like hand knitting, and really got into the sewing machine more than the machine knitting in the end. So I would make clothes because it was like quicker to make sort of fabric clothes on a sewing machine. I got really into sort of that 60s, 70s kind of aesthetic. So I would try and make my own clothes to get that sort of
Yeah.
look that I liked, which was good fun. And it was satisfying having something that you've made at the end. Because I was always more textiles than drawing and painting. I like something I can make and put on. And that's what
Yeah.
inspired me and excited me with creativity.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So, with all this creative energy, were you expecting or maybe expected to continue down that road in further education, in career?
Yeah, it wasn't something I really thought of massively at school. I came from a family where they were all hard workers, so I always had a really good work ethic. I don't know, as a kid at school, I'd be selling little knitted things in the playground for like 2p or something, selling bookmarks, knocking around the neighbours' doors, would you like to buy a bookmark I've made, and things like that. And then I had a paper round. I learned from a young age, you'd like nice things, and to pay your way, then you need to earn money. But no one in my family was particularly, didn't work in the creative field at all. Everyone just had jobs that were, either office based or they worked in a hospital. It was that kind of background, really. So there was no artist as such in my family that did that for a living that I'm aware of. But everyone worked hard and earned money. So I was quite academic at school. And because I didn't really paint or draw as such, GCSE art wasn't really on the cards for me. I didn't really get excitement from drawing as such. It was more making. So textiles I used to love, and I did that as a GCSE at school because I loved it so much. And the only thing I did consider creatively was doing an A-level in textiles, which was an option at my school. But the year I went into my A-levels, they stopped doing it.
Oh, no.
So that was a shame. Yeah, I always remember the teacher's name, Mrs. Abrahams. And I was like, oh, okay. But I liked the school I was at, and I really wanted to stay on at the sixth form there. Some of the other subjects I liked was geography, and I don't know if there was always something in my head that I might have my own business one day, so I did business studies as well. And I got my grades to go to university, but the year I went to go to university is when they introduced tuition fees. And I don't know, as a 18-year-old, that really scared me. The thought of getting into debt. I think it was like over £2,000 I'd have to get a loan for. For me personally, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I thought the right thing for me at that time to do was to get a job. And I did used to envy people at school. I still have envy is the right word, but there were some people at my school, they knew what they wanted to do from a child, but I never really knew what I wanted to do. I liked the thought of travelling, and I looked at being maybe a holiday rep, but again, the money wasn't great, so I didn't end up doing that. I left school, got a job in pensions to begin with. I knew I wanted to work in an office. I quite like the thought of working in offices in the corporate world. That just, for some reason, that appealed to me at that moment in time. And my creative side, that was just how I've dressed, was creative for me because I would wear these sort of vintage style clothes, my makeup. For me, it was going home after a day at work, and then I'd maybe work on my hobbies around obviously socialising at that age a lot. I suppose it was in my early 20s I started sort of hand knitting again as well. Still doing the machine sewing of clothes, but also doing some hand knitting again too.
You were working in in an office environment, in a corporate environment. And I know that you got to a point where you realized you weren't as happy or fulfilled in those roles as you thought you were or as you had been before. Was there a reason for that at a particular time? And if you took action on those realizations, what were those actions?
Yeah, so there was a big turning point when I was about 23. My brother unfortunately passed away in a car crash. Can we edit that bit? Live, isn't it? Sorry.
That's
Sometimes
all
I'm trying to
right.
do it, sometimes I'm not.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay. Goodness, Natalie. Oh.
Doing my own makeup now. Sorry. I did some of that. So, yeah, he unfortunately passed away in a car crash. Sorry, I'm just going to get a tissue. Sorry, Claire.
It's all
Which
right.
is still quite painful for me to obviously talk about. Um,
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah. So I mean, that was 16 years ago. But yeah, it still obviously still hits a nerve. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously that was a big. I mean, I threw myself into my job at the time. They wanted me to take more time off than I did. Unfortunately, my family don't live locally to me. I was really lucky because my husband, who was my boyfriend at that point in my life, was a real rock and supportive because I wasn't living with my family. But I just needed to try and get back into some normality after it happened. So I threw myself into my work at that time, which was in an office, and that was okay. But I think when you have something awful and as tragic as that happened to you, it does make you question everything you're doing and life in general. You know, you just start to think, what am I doing? What I enjoy? Or, and you know, with my jobs, I would, you know, maybe work in one area for a couple of years, and I'd go on to something new. So I've always wanted to learn new things, do new things. But yeah, I was getting to the point where I was like, actually, does this bring me joy? Am I really enjoying this, or is it just because I'm doing it because it's money and it's quite easy to do? But and then I started to think about what I love to do creatively, and thought, why can't I do that for work? Why am I doing this other stuff? You know, life's so short, as that made me realise. And then I suppose it was probably about another year or two that I started to think about. I was really loving my hand knitting, and I started to think about maybe doing something with that. And I started to look at maybe doing a degree in knitwear design. But there was a degree in Nottingham I could have done. But it was also around the same time me and my husband were looking at potentially getting a mortgage as well. I love Brighton so much. I really didn't like the thought of living away from here. So in the end, I decided, no, I really want to get a mortgage. I don't want to do a degree. I mean, I could have done one in Brighton, but this was more specialised than one in Nottingham, geared towards what I wanted to do. But then I found a City and Guilds. City and Guilds are great. They do so many different course options and things. And they did one in hand knitting or hand knitwear design. And it was one Sunday a month for a couple of years. And I thought, well, that's great. I can fit it around my job. You know, it's not going to interfere with that. There's homework in between, but that's okay. I did that instead, and I learned so much about hand knitting through that course, and it gave me the confidence then to start doing some work in that industry. I felt by having that qualification, it just gave me the confidence to then maybe work in it more. I felt like I had some, like a bit like school when you get your grades and your GCSEs or A levels. It just gave me that feel that I could maybe then do that,
Yeah.
which was good.
Yeah. And you did go on to do that, and you have become very proficient at designing knitwear patterns. You started designing knitwear patterns for Debbie Bliss. How did that come about? And for those who don't know, can you tell us why working with her was a big deal?
So originally in the course, I got to design some knitwear patterns and get them checked and learn from that. Again, it's all been about proactive to anyone out there. If you want to do it, you've got to be proactive. You can't really sit back and just hope someone will find you. There's something called Ravelry in the knitwear world, and I had a page on there. And Debbie Bliss is a very well-known hand knitwear designer. She does a lot of knitting patterns, and she's done them for quite a few years. So anyone that does hand knitting's probably heard of her, or some wool she used to produce. And she just so happened to be doing a book signing event at C&H Fabrics, which is a haberdashery shop down in Brighton where I live. So I just went along and I got a book signed, and I just started chatting to her, and I just showed her my sort of Ravelry page, stuff I'd made so far on my course. And she was really impressed by it. She's such a lovely, lovely woman, really lovely. And she said, oh, maybe we could collaborate. Maybe you might like to do something, a design for one of my magazines, because she's got a Debbie Bliss magazine. And I thought, well, yeah, great. We arranged to meet at her studio or in London. And I had a few ideas for this particular magazine. Anyway, she ended up commissioning me to do 4, which was quite a big thing because I'd never really designed for anyone. So I didn't know what the process was for an actual magazine, but she was really nurturing. She was lovely. She said, look, you're bound to make some mistakes because I appreciate you're new to it. You're quite young, you're new to it. Not a problem. For a first person to work with, she was so lovely. It was a dream. I cannot express how lovely she was. Such a nice person. And yeah, there were some mistakes because obviously I was new to writing knitwear patterns, but I learned so much from that process. It all went well in the end, luckily, finally, considering there was 4. She put a lot of faith into me doing 4 designs for her magazine. So I was, yeah, really lucky with that. And then I started selling my knitwear patterns on Ravelry. I started creating some more. And from having my work published in Debbie Bliss, I then felt I could approach some other knitwear magazines. I ended up building up a really good rapport with Knitting Magazine, who are based in Lewes, so they're not far from me. Mainly designed for them after that going forward. But my downfall was I was very scared of being in the public eye. And a lot of creatives are, I find. They don't always want to be on camera, or they're happy making things, but when it comes to you being in the forefront, it can be quite scary. And at that time, I was quite scared of all that, really. It held me back a bit back then. And also, I didn't know how to run a business, really. And I didn't really understand what it took to make being a knitwear designer financially successful for me at the time. When I look back, I had some really good opportunities, like Love Crafts, when they first set up their website. And I was one of the people that went in as a knitwear designer to discuss how to present the patterns. And I was one of the handful of people that sold on their platform to begin with. There wasn't only a handful of us.
Yeah.
So that was all really exciting. And I could have done so much more with it looking back, but I just didn't have that confidence. And also going on in the background, my husband had started his own business selling tools to builders in the construction industry. And he was struggling to get someone in the office. So I ended up initially just helping out, but it ended up becoming a real full-time job, just doing all the accounts and, everything for him, which came naturally and easy to me to do. I ended up prioritising that over the knitting, really. Yeah, and then it kind of, again, fell back into the background, my creativity. It became more of a hobby again whilst I was working in that business and helping with that, really. I was still doing a bit for the magazines on the side around that, but then it got too much where I had a lot of work to do for him. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep up the deadlines because they have obviously strict deadlines, understandably, for different issues. So then I just went back into making things on the sewing machine, doing a bit of knitting around another kind of office-based job again, really.
Creativityfound.co.uk is the place to go to find workshops, courses, supplies, kits and books to help you get creative. So if you're looking for your own Creativity Found experience, go have a browse to see what's on offer so far. And if you can help adults to find their new creative passion, please get in touch on social media or through the contact details on the website. So from your having got your creative momentum back by doing the knitwear patterns, by making that actually the main role in your life, you've then kind of lost it a bit again by the sounds of things. As we know from the beginning, you do find it again. But in the meantime, because you were helping your husband, it was the family business, so to speak. Yeah. Did that kind of make it all okay? And was there again, as we mentioned earlier, a kind of point at which you wanted to go, look, I don't want this to be my full-time work. I'd like to explore my creativity more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good to help him. I got great satisfaction putting systems in place and really helping him for a while. But again, with me, if I'm doing the same thing day in, day out, I do get bored eventually. I like to progress to a new thing. And the thing is, with his business, it's always going to be the same work. There's never going to be a change as such, to a degree, in that kind of office world. Whereas with what I do now, I'm designing new things all the time, so it's always different. Although you could say, oh, it's the same kind of work, it isn't, because you create something different. That's why I never became a maker in the sense that I make the same thing over and over again. Ultimately, I'm a designer. I like to design new things, and that's what excites me. That's what excites me in my creativity. So about 5 years ago, I went to Morocco, Marrakesh, on a holiday. And I noticed there was so much embroidery, and it really is, again, it's finding your inspiration as a creative person. And I was so inspired by the hand embroidery on things, on bags. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is beautiful. And when I got back, I wanted to try doing some hand embroidery. So I found an online course where I learned to do, I hadn't really done loads of hand embroidery prior to that point. It'd always been either sewing on the sewing machine or hand knitting. So it was another new thing to try that was textiles related, which was good. And that's where I would just do different types of embroidery. So in 2020, around lockdown, I was looking for a new embroidery project, again, round the work, like a hobby. And I was going through my vintage magazines, Golden Hands magazines they were, from the 70s. And there was some Florentine embroidery in there. And I thought, oh, that looks really effective. What's that? And I was looking through. And then I eventually discovered the umbrella name, Bargello, and these are little things sort of within that. And I thought it was so effective and yet a really simple stitch. And I thought around work, it's something I can do. I can watch TV. It's not like intricate cross stitch or, shading embroidery, style of embroidery. You've really got to have good daylight. I could do it in the evenings. It was like straight stitches on bigger canvas with wool. So it's thicker thread. And I like geometric, the way my brain works. I quite like the patterns and the symmetry of it. So it just worked really well for me. I said to my husband, I said, oh, I think I'm just going to initially try on Etsy and make a couple of patterns again. Because I'd done it with knitwear design, it came naturally to me to be able to create patterns and maybe some kits to go along with it. And then it got to last year and I was sort of selling more and more of the patterns, and I produced some more kits. And I sort of said to my husband, I'm really enjoying this and I really want to try and maybe do this as a business. And he was like, okay, well, I have to see if you can get someone to replace me for the majority of the time in the office. Because he knew how supportive I've been with him, he's just a very lovely, supportive person. And yeah, I'm really lucky. He has been really supportive through my journey of setting this business up. And he's always really excited for me when I get sales or, I create something new. You've given me 9 years of your life in this business. He said, I'm happy to help you too,
That's absolutely brilliant. Did you, before actually broaching the subject, did you have any nerves?
Definitely. I think anyone would, like even if you're changing jobs or if you hand in your notice in your current job, you do always have them nerves, I think. There was the nerves of having to say to him, I don't want to do this anymore. Is that okay? And of course, I think in an ideal world, he'd love it if I still worked with him full time. But he understands it's not my particular dream or vision, and he knows I'm so creative, and that's what I ultimately want to be working in if I can. He's very supportive of that, which is great. So that is good. Yeah.
Brilliant. Are there similarities in the working processes from designing knitwear patterns and now what you're doing with Bargello patterns?
There are some, definitely. I mean, the beginning bit is your inspiration. What's inspiring you? I'd say that to anyone who wants to do something creative. What inspires you? What do you like? What aesthetic do you like? Do you like historical things? Is there something like from the Victorian Regency era? Are you into sci-fi? What inspires you? What colours do you like? And I think always keep your mind open. Just try different crafts. So with regards to the design side, initially it starts with an inspiration, right? What's inspiring me? When I was a knitwear designer, if I was designing for a magazine, they have a mood board. So you have to design within line with what they're looking for and send some submissions, and then they'll come back yay or nay, But now I check in more with my audience to see in Bargello what they like. Am I going down the right track? Because that was another mistake I made at the beginning. I maybe designed something, but does everyone like that, or the colours? And you've got to sort of be interactive, really. Again, getting out there and just sharing. Initially it starts with a similar thing with knitwear, it's inspiration, and then working out how you're going to do it. So obviously different mediums, obviously with embroidery and knitting, but again, the same thing, you calculate, you work out colours, you do the making, which is really fun. So it's very similar in that respect, definitely, although a different kind of working out the design. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So you've got some kind of freedoms, but then also guidance from your audience. You've probably got the skills, the technical skills for actually writing the pattern and writing the
yeah,
instructions. You know, I'm an editor of books where people need to read the book and know what to do, and getting that text down and those charts and pictures down properly so that your audience can really do it is, of course, very, very important.
you're absolutely right. That's the other part, being able to write knitwear patterns. I always got good feedback from the mags. They love working with me for knitwear design because they said I wrote my patterns very well. It made writing Bargello patterns, I already, in my head, I suppose, had a format of how to chart them, how to make them in a way that people could read them, hopefully read them well. So far, touch wood, I've had some good feedback on my patterns and people saying how well laid out they are and how they can read them, the charts. I just got literally obsessed with Bargello embroidery. I mean, I still love knitting and all those kind of things, but I'm really inspired at the minute by this style of embroidery, which I'm loving. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Having turned Bargello into a business,
Yeah.
do you feel that you are still able to glean the benefits of creativity on your overall lifestyle? And what plans do you have for the future?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so I'm always trying to learn new things that maybe I can incorporate into Bargello at some point. Sometimes with the Bargello, I will do other crafts around that. I like sometimes I might sew some clothes for myself that might go with the Bargello accessory, or so I'll do some sewing, which I love doing. I'm a big believer of slow fashion, personally, and I like to make my own clothes when I can. But I think from doing the embroidery, it's made me want to do some more things that I'm doing actually by hand, so not all on the sewing machine or things like that. And that's been really good fun. Doing other types of embroidery where you're still using wool, and I've been really enjoying that. Yeah, so I think plans for the future is just create more kits, just see Bargello Go grow really, get more of an audience, get more people to know of the brand and what I do. And in my business, I do try and use British suppliers. I use Appleton's wool in my kits, which is made and produced and dyed in the UK, which is amazing. And I got to visit them, and it was just brilliant. To know we've still got that here in England is great, and we haven't got to sort of travel miles to get that. And I've recently collaborated with some people on some kits. A really good artist locally who designed my latest tote bags. Her name's Natalie in Sussex, a business called 13 Scorpios. And then Zoe, who's also local to me, who's got a company called Ada Binks. I recently collaborated with her to make some cool wall hanging edges for one of my kits, which was really good. And she does that 60s style kind of jewellery and things with perspex, and the perspex is made in the UK. So it's all really good, and it's great to meet, again, through creativity. You meet all these new people, like through your group as well. I managed to supply some kits before in the creativity found group with Nancy, who does Createful in Portsmouth. Yeah,
Yeah, we love a bit of collaboration.
and that's what's good with creativity found, because you get to share your skills and with other people, and it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an absolute joy to be able to facilitate that. So, Natalie, how can people connect with you?
Lots of different ways. I'm on a few things now. Seems to be building up with all the social media, the way we're growing. There's obviously my website, which is www.bargelloagogo.com. It's BARGELLO, agogo.com. I'm on Instagram, which is bargelloagogo. I'm also on YouTube, where I do free videos showing techniques of Bargello embroidery, and sometimes I show free patterns on how to make things as well. And I'm on Facebook. There's a Facebook page as well, and Pinterest. But if you go to the website, ultimately there'll be a link to various things. You can have a look around there and see. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for talking with me today. It's been really good to hear your story. It's been interesting to hear you're like a creativity found as you went to it and then went away and then came back again. So
Exactly.
that's good perseverance.
If it's in you, you just keep trying and you'll find a way. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good story in that. Don't never give up on your dreams. Just keep trying, and it will happen for you. It will happen. You just got to put yourself out there, almost get over yourself in a way. Don't be scared, don't be shy, just try. And yeah, sometimes there will be no's in life, and you just keep trying and you find a way. And I just think that's the best thing you can do, really. Just don't do what I did in the knitwear side and just be a bit afraid and and back away. Just keep pushing yourself. Just go outside your comfort zone. That is difficult for people sometimes, but you've just got to. If you really want it, you'll find a way, and it gets easier. You get used to it, like anything. The more you do it, if you're enjoying it, you don't even see it as a big learning curve. You're just enjoying the process, and when you find that craft or whatever it is you enjoy creatively, you're ultimately enjoying it, and it doesn't matter if you make mistakes.
The importance of enjoyment, not perfectionism.
Definitely. I completely agree.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you for having me on here today, Claire. Much appreciated. And
You're very welcome.
I look forward to seeing more in the group. So, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Creativity Found. If your podcast app has the facility, please leave a rating and review to help other people find us. On Instagram and Facebook, follow @CreativityFoundPodcast, and on Pinterest, look for @CreativityFound. And finally, don't forget to check out creativityfound.co.uk, the website connecting adults who want to find a creative outlet with the artists and crafters who can help them tap into their creativity.